Hi, everyone, and welcome to this 23rd virtual panel organized and hosted by PAVE Europe. My name is Guido di Pasquale. I'm the managing director of PAVE Europe, and I'm very excited today for this first virtual panel of 2025. As autonomous driving technology continues to advance, ensuring the safety and the reliability of these systems has never been more critical. So the topic of today is how can AI-driven approaches to verification and validation help accelerate the development of safe autonomous vehicles. In this session, we will try to dive into the cutting-edge techniques in AI-based verification and validation, exploring their role in shaping the future of autonomous driving, addressing the challenges and the opportunities and all the cases that we can have in action today and tomorrow. I'm very pleased and excited to have two exceptional AV and AI experts with us today. Mihai Nica, Global Head of ADAS, Automated Driving and Connectivity at AVL List. Hello, Mihai, welcome.
Welcome, hello.
And Daniel Watzenig, who is both Professor of Autonomous Driving at Technical University in Graz, but also CTO and Head of Electronics Department at Virtual Vehicle Research.
Thank you very much. Welcome to everyone.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to have such experts in our panel and conversation today for this very interesting topic, and also a topic that is more and more important, especially look at what is happening around the world and what is happening also in terms of regulations in Europe and outside Europe. So I would start asking both of you to introduce yourself in a better way than I did, and especially giving us an overview of what you do in your organizations and also what your organizations do in the space of autonomous vehicles. Mihai, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you very much. Mihai Nica is my name. I'm responsible in AVL for the autonomous driving and assisted driving and the connectivity topics. We are at AVL, we try to take from the system engineering part up to vehicle validation, software development, everything which is necessary to bring ADAS AD, to enable ADAS AD on the streets. We are about 400 people worldwide, all 45 countries distributed. And we see in the last years, I was talking to you before we start this meeting, within this now also in Europe, luckily, an increase in the existence of autonomous driving vehicles, so vehicles which are now moving to this level 4 autonomy, especially on buses and trucks, but also on passenger cars. And of course, connected to this topic, it's a topic of artificial intelligence, which starts with testing, but also ends up with perception and control algorithms. So I will try to cover all these discussions. I think you cannot limit AI just on validation. AI, it's much more complex, and it will be definitely the tool of choice for software-defined vehicles, for automated vehicles. So nice being here and nice to talk to you about these topics.
Thank you, Mihai. And Daniel.
Great. So as Guido already mentioned, so I do have two affiliations at the university. I'm with the Institute of Visual Computing. Main focus there, of course, is robotics, so all kind of foundation models for robotics, including all the techniques within machine learning, reinforcement learning, supervised, unsupervised learning, and of course, the vision-based part, which means multimodal perception of the environment and implementing robots. And of course, autonomous vehicles are robots in general. there the focus, of course, is research and training and education, which perfectly fits to the idea of what PAVE is doing, the intuition of PAVE. And the other hand, I'm with the Virtual Vehicle Research Center, which is an applied research center, so which mainly works with the industry, doing applied research with the industry. So Mihai and I do cooperate since many, many years in the field of building prototypes, building L4 functionalities, doing, let's say, the entire software stack, collaborating with companies like Apex AI in the US. And probably one thing that might be of interest to the group today is when it comes to teaching, I'm also teaching at Stanford University since 2019, topic of multi-sensor fusion, always in December. And since 23, I'm also teaching at Dongji University, Autonomous Systems in Shanghai. So having a, let's say, good idea where the US, especially California, is doing, or what they are doing, and also what Shanghai is doing. So I think that could be of benefit for today's discussion.
That's great. Many roles, and let me also mention that AVL is a member of PAVE Europe, and you, Daniel, are a member of our academic advisory council. So it's a pleasure also to have your contribution and support within PAVE Europe. So let's start with this conversation and this discussion. And I always like to start first with some definitions, because we are talking about verification and validation of our autonomous driving features today, and then AI-based. But who wants to start defining verification and validation of autonomous driving feature? What are we talking about here? Mihai,
I can say some words about it. I think we deal with this almost in everyday's life. For us, it's the whole process and the whole tasks you have to perform in order that you can state when you deliver the product that you delivered a safe and trust and reliable product. It means it starts with simulation, a lot of simulation. It goes up to the hill part and ends up with vehicle part, with the testing in the vehicle, proving ground, and on the street testing. And it's not just about one or the other. It's about what we call a multi-pillar approach, using different technologies, combining the results, make it very efficient, but it's always about safety argumentation, why my vehicle is safe to drive. It's not hocus pocus. There are a lot of methods behind it. And if you do it properly, you are also able to state something about the safety of your vehicle at the end. So that's for us verification and validation, the sum of all operations we have to perform in order to bring safe and reliable autonomous vehicles on the street.
Right. And thank you, Mihai. And Daniel, what is instead AI-based verification?
Yeah. So so just catching up what Mihai said, we do have, so probably you could actually say there are two streams that are now merging. The one stream, of course, is you're using techniques out of, let's say, the world of artificial intelligence. There are so many out there to, let's say, to just get more exploration when they do validation verification, so that your final product is more, let's say, more tested. You're exploring more in the, let's say, in the parameter space. You're testing just more against your specifications. Using AI techniques is much, let's say, much more comprehensive than just using formal techniques that are, of course, very good, but they are getting very, very complex for complex products like we have. The other thing, of course, is your product, your final product, our autonomous vehicle could, of course, have foundation models in it. That means not only for the camera, and that's probably one of the things we discussed today, that foundation models, so AI models, are getting more and more accepted for autonomous vehicles. There was no, let's say, when we discussed it 10 years, 12 years ago, end-to-end learning, those kind of things, it was just far away. Now techniques are much better, so you get more and more foundation models, and we can discuss that today, how safety is meanwhile assessed for those kind of foundation models in, let's say, for instance, for path planning, for perception in a car. So you have AI techniques for validation verification, and then you need, let's say, to check and to verify and validate AI components itself. And that brings it together. So in the end, you use AI techniques for AI-powered systems. So that's the, let's say, the maximum you could actually do in terms of complexity. And I think that's where we are right now, because we see more and more foundation models accepted in, let's say, in different functions in a level 4 car. And that means we need to come up with solutions. And that's right where we are. And we all have seen that driven by generative AI in the last 3 years, a lot of things are now more mature, so more ready. And of course, when we talk about autonomous vehicles, we need to talk about generative AI in combination with agentic AI, which means we're talking about agents, multi-agents.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. And Mihai, what are the key challenges in verifying validated autonomous driving systems today, and how can AI help address these challenges?
So before I would answer this question, I would like to say 2 things. So when we actually one thing, but with two components. When we speak about AI, it's not just about machine learning. It's what's so-called the symbolic AI, which is rule-based AI, which is really important, and the non-symbolic AI, which is this machine learning techniques, these foundation models, generative AI, and so on. And if you ask me about how AI can support, I will have both these definitions in my mind. So on one side, we have very good methods using the ODD, integrating the operational design domain as a formal ontology, for example, and generating out of this database really efficient test programs with less redundancy, with higher coverage of the parameters and the scenarios. And that would be a symbolic AI help you get. And in non-symbolic AI, there are techniques like game-based and so on, where you can use AI to find edge case, corner cases, and so on. All this, of course, in simulation. There is, of course, the necessity when you go into this direction to have good simulation models, depending on which is a degree of quality you have to get out of the results. It's also important when you speak about AI to understand that you can use AI in the validation to generate better models of your vehicle, of everything. So it's not just about generating test cases, it's also about generating good environmental models. It's about generating good vehicle models and sensor models by using, for example, some machine learning techniques to replicate some of the behavior. So AI has a lot of application, a lot of potential. It definitely supports you to test efficient, to save money, and to have high coverage. So that is our spectrum. But you have to consider these 2 things: symbolic AI, which is this database, knowledge-based. This is the classical AI. And non-symbolic AI, which is this open AI, ChatGPT, and so on, what we see with machine learning and everything, where you have these black box. And this is where you definitely have the challenges, because to use this kind of AI, it has to be trustable and explainable. Trustable, I have to be sure that he's doing exactly what I would expect to do. Explainable, when something happens and it's not what I would have expected, I need to understand why. And this is the biggest challenge we have when you use AI in different applications.
Oh, that's very interesting. Also, this challenge or issue of validating these AI tools or even simulators, so how to validate them, and how to also to ensure that people understand that there are these processes behind, and these tools that are trustable tools and explainable, as you said. Daniel, it's we have in Europe several projects regarding scenarios, and how Mihai mentioned that a bit, and how scenarios are generated. What do you think? What is for you the most efficient way to collect and manage scenarios data for autonomous driving? Public roads, controlled environments, simulated scenarios. Is this the direction that we should take?
Yeah, that's a good one. if you think back 10 years back from now, our way in Europe was pretty clear. We need to define scenarios, create scenario databases, identify scenarios, agree on a data set of scenarios and a set of scenarios. So that was our, let's say polarizing a little bit now, our conservative way. We need something to test against. The typical way we in the automotive industry, we love the V cycle, but it starts always with requirements. And you test against the requirements. If the test is successful, we're done, the product is good. And we tackled autonomous driving exactly that way. We need scenarios to test against. We need to identify those kind of rare events, corner cases, all those kind of things. We discussed in meeting rooms about what will happen if someone with a yellow jacket during sunset crosses the street. So it was very theoretical. China and the US did it from the beginning on a little bit different. They just started to drive. We in Europe said we actually would like to do, so the old term was front loading, shift to virtual development. So there are different terms to do much things, or let's say as many things as possible in the simulation, because simulation is cheaper. Of course, we know in simulation you just get answers to questions you're asking, while in the real world you get answers to questions you have no idea about because of the physical interactions, things you have probably not modeled in your simulation model. And you get the answers in the real system, of course, because the simulations are always an approximation of reality. So the US, we're just collecting miles, collecting impressions, and then they actually, and those are for them also a lot of work to do, then to check what kind of scenarios are more important, which are less important, and they just let's say kept the ones that are more important. And so they learned just while driving, and they got their scenarios, and meanwhile, let's say, just coming back to the AI topic, meanwhile, we have fantastic simulation environments. It's not only NVIDIA, it's applied into intuition. AVL has fantastic tools. So meanwhile, you can, of course, you still need certain real world tests that you need to do on public roads or on the proving ground. But you can easily, let's say, refine those kind of scenarios just using different AI techniques. And meanwhile, AI techniques, as I said before, are so advanced that it's getting in a way that you really can do with only, let's say, a few real tests. You can get a good answer how good and how safe your system actually is.
Yeah. And there are projects also funded by the European Commission, like just to mention one, Synergies, that are trying to harmonize or to have a unified database for scenarios. What do you think about this EU-wide approach to scenario database?
In the end, it's important to have such a scenario just to learn from mistakes in the past, and just to have, let's say, at least a certain set of data which makes sense. In development, it's always quite helpful to have templates, to have something which is already agreed on. But in the end, we just need to make sure that we not lose the pace because others are just doing, just testing and creating products. Of course, it helps that if you don't have the classical homologation process that we actually have in Europe, self-certification sometimes helps a bit to be faster on the market. That's probably one of the things we are a bit probably too slow. Although our, let's say, our ideas and the projects that have been granted by the European Commission, they are great. There's a great spirit behind. We just need to make sure that the results are really fed back to the industry, and the industry is really pushing forward this technology.
Yeah, no, thank you, Daniel. Mihai, talking about regulatory and cultural differences across regions, and I mean Europe has, and US and China. How these differences impact the development and testing of autonomous driving technologies? Europe versus China versus US. I mean, you have a lot of experience. You travel and work in all these regions, so better than you.
So I'll start with the regulation. I think the question is quite good. It's a culture and a regulation thing. The regulations, Daniel already almost answered these questions. You have countries which are not regulating a lot, and then they drive a lot of mileage. So if you kill somebody or if something happens in Europe, you lose your license forever. You will never ever drive a car. In US, there are some hard consequences, but not if you have some proof of validity, you can still manage to get the license back. And in China, it's less it's not so strongly regulated like in Europe. So you have these differences, and it is where the approach comes in. And you have like in the community, we say China, it's more of a software-centric approach where you have very, very high iterations, a lot of updates. If you look, we had a nice table once looking at the OTA, so over-the-air updates in China compared to Europe. In Europe, you get one per year in a service, and in China, you get like 200 in a year, or sometimes even 500 in a year, especially for the new models. I would like so in US you have some states like Nevada and like California, which are providing you some regulations where you can try to bring your car on the street, but still you have, as an OEM, a lot of responsibility. In Europe takes the state a lot of responsibility. So there is definitely a huge challenge on this area. Not to speak about different operational design domains, so different road types, different traffic signs, all this stuff, which makes it even harder. But it's just about bringing a car on the regulation stuff. On the other side, it's about the acceptance, cultural, as you call it. The cultural part, it's a bit more tricky because it's on one side is, of course, it's about trust. Do I want to experiment? Do I like it? And so on, which I think definitely in China and US top. Europe, again, a bit more conservative customers. But it's also about how things are feeling. For example, a Chinese customer likes to have very abrupt curvatures when they're driving. When you train with an AI, when you drive, an European customer doesn't like it. So you'd like to feel more on the right side, but not too much on the right side. Brake when you go around. So these cultural things make even this kind of acceptance very difficult. So it's about trust, but also cultural acceptance. We had customers, they brought their cars from China to Europe. Huawei as supplier, for example, which is #1 in China, and they were like, "Oh my God, it's so great!" And when it went in Europe, nobody wanted to touch it because it was a different feeling. It was, and this is the cultural stuff. So cultural, how the car behaves compared to the driver, and this is a lot of AI behind. Yeah, and definitely, as I said, the most challenging. I would say the country or region, it's definitely European Union. But I think if we manage to bring cars here, you can bring it everywhere. I think you are in the professional league when you manage to bring cars, autonomous cars in Europe. Only then. Before that, you just play around.
If you can make it there, you can make it everywhere.
Exactly. This is New York of autonomous driving.
Exactly.
And there's probably one thing to add, because AVL also has a tech center, at least one tech center in China. What Mihai and I learned over the last years in the Chinese market, also explained from Chinese colleagues and friends, that Chinese people on average are more tolerant to new technology than we in Europe are. We are always a bit conservative, and we like to come up with criticism instead of trying out and let's see if it works. Chinese customers usually say, okay, I'm trying it out, and if I get the updates for free and getting my let's say my product, my car or whatever it is, over the time better and better, then I'm fine with it. We are waiting till others tried it out on average. I say it on average, it's not for every one of us, but we are waiting. Others should try out, or we are reading ratings on Amazon before we try and buy a product, checking what others have already seen and experienced before we actually do the step forward. So we have just a different culture on average in Europe, and Chinese are completely different. That's one of the things I learned over the last 2.5 years. And Americans probably also a bit more interested in just trying out new technology, just seeing what's going on out there. We are just a bit more, let's wait, let's see if it works out, and let's go for, we are not going for beta version. We always wait. We always wait for the final version.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to take a question from the audience. We have one to both of you. how efficient and safe can you claim this simulation-based testing for AI models? From safety perspective, how do you argue that our test results are acceptable for our safety case?
So I can start with the answer. It starts with the models. I always say start with the models. It's Modell Goethe, it's called in German. So you have when you use AI, it's anyway, when you use it for verification and validation, is extrinsic. So it's basically searching for edge case and corner cases. So when it finds an edge case on a corner case using different approaches, then it's a question, does the real vehicle behave the same or not? Or the opposite, I didn't find anything. Does it mean that I'm free of failures? And this is where there are techniques and we have methods. This is why I also said this about this multi-pillar approach, mathematical formula based on the test you did on calibrating the models, based on which tools you're using. If you are a sensor model, what is it's a high fidelity and so on, where you compute these metrics. And then at the end, you can use it in your safety argumentation. But I think it's a wrong question. I mean, can you say it's the same when you drive on the street? No. It's going back to China. I can give the Xiaomi example when the car really started to park very strange and hit a lot of parking place, and they didn't manage till now to solve the problem, and they just went back to their initial software, and they do not do a lot of simulation. So it's nothing. It's 100% bulletproof. It's always about how you use different environments, how you compute the metrics for the different environments, and how you add up the metrics in that. And as I said, this is called in the literature or in the industry, the multi-pillar approach. And you distribute this. And based on this distribution, you have your final metric, which gives you a sense of confidence or not. And in Europe, the nice thing about Europe, if you do it properly and you give it to the authority, then authority it's working with you to approve this, and they are supporting you if something happens. In other things, you might not have to do it, but then you are alone in other countries. So yeah, it's about model quality. It's about how you use the environments together. And it's also about tooling and tool qualification, all these kind of things. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Danny, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, it's a very important question. So thanks for that one. It's all about safety critical functions that we are talking about. For non-safety cases, it's done, it's fine. But for AVs, and if we talk about localization or perception or reasoning and decision making, it's all safety critical. And Mihai already touched many things that are done for now. And what is the state of the art? I would just add that the current state of the art, if you would like, or if you use a foundation model, for instance, for perception in your autonomous level 4 vehicle, how do you ensure safety? Right, technically spoken, it's all about a shell structure. The first shell always is, because the issue, just to say one additional point, the issue in foundation models or in general AI models is you get an input and you get an output. You have different neurons in there, different edges that are activated, and you cannot guarantee that for the same input there's always the same output. It's of course within a region, but it's you have different activations in the many layers you have, the many hidden layers in between. Automotive industry doesn't like that kind of behavior. If the output sometimes has some variation. So what you typically do is in the first shell, you do some sort of uncertainty quantification, which means you do some what is the uncertainty. So you need to quantify the uncertainty for the output and also mitigate the impact of the so-called hallucination effects, something that happens due to different activation of layers and edges in the net. That's the first shell. The second shell typically is the runtime testing or the runtime monitoring within the car, so within the running car, and you have certain guardrails, which include, for instance, safety fallbacks or let's say dynamic ODD fencing, etc., things like that. So you're already getting better and better for the safety case. And finally, of course, that's the third shell or the outermost shell is about the rigorous testing and safety KPIs. There you need to fulfill formally derived KPIs. But in between, also in the arrow shells, you have already more or less quantified the uncertainty of the output behavior. So that's the way you are currently proving or assessing the safety of a foundation model. And that's the way forward. And you probably will see that NVIDIA is doing that, other companies as well. That's exactly the structure that is seen as the one that helps you to get a type approval for your car.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel. We have another question from the audience. Should AV operators be required to share transparent data on the performance of their vehicles with regulators to build confidence and trust in their safety? Is that even possible for end-to-end deep learning systems? Who wants to take that?
Yeah, I think I might start this time. The end-to-end learning, or let's put it this way. So there is the modular approach that we are following right now, especially here in let's say all the level 3 cars that we have, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, they have the modular approach, which means you have your perception, prediction, planning, and actuation. All those steps, and each single block is analyzed in terms of safety separately. End-to-end learning would mean you have your sensor input and your steering wheel angle at the other side. So you have just a neural network in between, which was seen as the way forward back in 2013 or 14. It quickly turned out it was way too early. And even today, it's not the approach that is followed. It's a combination of the modular approach and so-called a differentiable architecture. So differentiable architecture is a bit of a mathematical term, means that the input-out behavior in your network is somehow, let's say, can be mapped. So there are, for instance, sigmoidal functions used, so you can work onwards and backwards and to get the same answer. And this architecture is the way that is currently implemented. And coming to the sharing data to the, let's say, to third bodies, especially when it comes to the public authorities. So I do think it is important, because that's exactly the way forward to get more and more acceptance in this technology, because otherwise you always have to answer questions: is AI safe enough? I do not believe in AI, and I'm don't going for the technology. So I think it's pretty important to do that. Probably not all the data can be shared. At least for at a certain stage, it has to be shared.
Wants to be shared. It's definitely helpful, but the question is, what does it really mean? I had this discussion, and I heard this discussion several times. So the definitely it's necessary, but you have what we are missing before we are speaking about big sharing of data. I mean, Daniel just discussed about end-to-end training and so on. And there are different approaches also over there. You can also use guards to reinforce, and you can also reinforce to help to avoid some of the things. So the story is never simple, and the algorithms are also different. There are approaches and approaches, but this is the way you are sharing data. Just providing an edge case or a corner case where software it didn't perform without having information about how it was trained with background, that is, might be an overflow. So it's about how you structure that data. It's about what kind of data. It's usual. You don't have to share millions of miles. For Tesla, it's definitely valuable, because they know what to do with that data, because they know how the data was collected and how the system which got that data was actually operating. What Daniel told you, it's one approach. There are also different approaches. Different OEMs have different approaches to that, combining rule-based, symbolic, and so on. It's never a single solution. And that's make it better or worse. And just getting some scenarios, it's interesting, definitely. But you should not see it as a KO criteria. If I don't get it, that's why I'm not getting it. It's definitely a nice thing to have, inspirational. There were a lot of tentatives. Also, BMW did it in Europe before, and so on. There were a lot of tentatives, and I think also Tesla shares some information. Waymo shares a lot of data, a lot. Waymo you almost have all the data. So it's not that. It's all about how you put that data into context. I think we are still one step before we discuss so big about having a lot of data. It's a step of all about deciding about what's safe AI, how to build a safe AI, how to train a safe AI, what's necessary. And then when you ask this question, and we know some rules, is that like traffic rules, know how to build it, then we can move into asking a lot of data from the government. Of course, the government needs that data and they have to, but I will not say because I don't have the data, I'm not able to do something. That's I don't think it's the right answer.
Thank you, Mihai, Daniel. I would listen to you for hours, but unfortunately, we are at the end of our virtual panel. But before we close, I would like to ask you just your final remark. If you want to add anything, just 1 minute each to close the session.
Oh.
Do you want to start?
For me, it's clear AI is here and will be here, and it's here to stay. That's definitely. AI is not just about verification. It's not just about validation. You can use it for a lot of applications. For automotive, and we discussed again at the beginning before of starting. For automotive, what's the biggest limitation right now are except trustable experiments is the computational power. We are making huge progresses. We discussed about the Willow. Of course, this is still a POC, a concept and so on, but still quite valuable. And I think the companies, if Waymo managed, for example, with Google to bring this into series, you will see them very fast running around with excellent 2-3 times training algorithms, safety dogs, and so on, everything AI. So you would have a lot of possibilities when you have such power in your car. So if you manage to solve the solution, the problem of architectures, of EE architectures, of computational power, you can speed up a lot this process. It's just about when it comes. But I think AI needs to be part of everything, of the development, of the perception, and of testing, of course.
Thank you, Mihai. Daniel?
Yeah. That is a very, very strong statement, Mihai. Very good. What I could actually just want to add, and I think the AI is meanwhile more mature than we had it 5 years ago. We see generative AI and agentic AI really coming in many applications. So generative means always creating content, while agentic AI means reasoning and directing. So we're getting more and more human behavior, which helps us quite a lot. So I fully agree with Mihai said that let's say AV without foundation models or without AI will not happen. And probably the other thing is that might be a topic that we cannot solve today and it's going to be hard in Europe, is that the end user, let's say the OEM, not the end user as we as customers, but in the value chain, the OEM is in Europe still thought it's always our car manufacturers. It's the Renault, it's the Volvo, it's the BMW. If you look to the more successful areas right now in the US, in China, it's not the OEMs that are the let's say the ones. The OEMs have changed. So Waymo is not building car. They are using Jaguar Land Rover cars. In China, it's Didi. Didi is something like Uber. So they are interested in level 4 cars. We in Europe have, although no one is talking about it, somehow decided that we keep level 2 dot something and level 3, and level 4 is something, we are not fully clear if we need that, because that means you need a big change in your architecture. And many OEMs, and I would probably say all OEMs right now, are following the level 2, level 3 path, while the level 4 path is just a different path than we are not touching at the moment.
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel. Fully clear. So, Mihai, Daniel, thank you very much for joining this conversation. Thank you to the audience, to all the participants who joined us today. I hope that you enjoyed our conversation as much as I did. The recording will be available in our YouTube channels and podcast channel. And again, thanks a lot, and see you next time.
Thanks, Guido, and thanks to everyone for joining today.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.